Hello, welcome to another installment of Cooking with Colbath. My name is Julie Colbath, and I work in the Office of Student Life as a coordinator of Civic Engagement. So thank you for tuning in again. We're going to try something a little bit different today. We're going to be doing a YouTube premiere instead of a Facebook live video. But y'all are welcome. There should be a chat box. Y'all are welcome to throw stuff in the chat, and I'll be responding to it as well. Today we're going to make a couple simple things. So the first thing that we're going to be making is a skillet lasagna. I don't know about all y'all, but I really like lasagna, but I hate turning on my oven in the summer, right? It's too warm outside. I don't want my air conditioning to get into overdrive, and I don't want to heat up my house. So this is a nice way to just make something that's one of my favorite things and very comforting, just on the stovetop, and it all cooks in one pot, so less dishes. Win-win. So for that, the recipe that I posted calls for ground beef or turkey. You can also make this vegetarian by substituting vegetables or tofu if you want. I don't have ground beef or turkey today, and I grew up eating vegetarian lasagna, so that's what I'm going to make today. So instead of ground beef and turkey, I am using broccoli, which is one of my favorite vegetables. Do y'all have a favorite vegetable? There's an interesting question, right? If you were a fruit or a vegetable, which would you be and why? If you have any thoughts about that, throw it in the chat. We're also going to be using a small onion and some Italian seasoning. I'm at the very end of mine. We'll be using some pasta sauce. You can use any kind you want. This is just Meyer brand. We'll be using cheese, also one of my favorite things. This is not for me to drink. We will be using some water. And then we'll be using some lasagna noodles. So for this recipe, I guess they make mini lasagna noodles. I've never really seen them, never really looked in the grocery store. So I always just normally have bigger lasagna noodles. So you can just use those and break them. And while that's cooking, I have a busy morning tomorrow, so I'm going to show you how I normally make overnight oats. The nice thing with overnight oats is that, it's takes less than 5 minutes to put them together the day before, throw them in the fridge, you can grab them on the go, or for me, I don't always give myself enough time before I have meetings and stuff, so then I'm able to grab it before. So basically, for overnight oats, you mostly just use some sort of milk. Today I have almond milk because I've run out of normal dairy milk, but you could use soy milk, coconut milk, whatever floats your boat. And then oats. Traditionally, I think old-fashioned oats work better because they're a little bit thicker, and so the oats are going to absorb the liquid. But you can kind of use whatever oats you have, and then you can just add whatever toppings you want. So we're going to get started by chopping up some broccoli. I almost did it beforehand, but then I realized that I haven't done this yet, and my way might not technically be the right way, but we're going to do it anyway. So let me grab a knife. And I noticed I was going back through some of these videos and uploading them that sometimes you can't hear me because I'm walking away from the computer or I'm on the side. So I'm going to try my best to try to face the computer so that y'all can hear me. So I'm just going to move you quick. Whoop. All right. So we're going to go to our little table. I'm going to grab my broccoli. Cool. So if you are substituting vegetables for meat, you can use whatever you want. I know the recipe already calls for onions, green pepper, and mushroom. I don't have a green pepper, so I'm not going to add it, and I don't always love mushrooms, so I'm just not going to put them in there. So normally with a head of broccoli, I'll just go and try to create like smaller, sort of like little trees. So just kind of trying to, it's not a great way to show you, but sometimes I'll just cut the stalk off. I'm going to grab my compost bag. I'm going to throw that in my compost. And so then, right, you have more of like a broccoli crown. So sometimes you can just pull the little florets apart. So I'm going to do that. And then you get to the part where the florets don't easily come off as much, so you can kind of cut it again. Right, so we have a little bit more of the stalk. We're just going to throw that in the compost bag. So then I'm just going to break these. And then after that, so you see these are getting a lot smaller than the initial ones. So I want mine to be about this size. So I'm going to leave this one as it is. I'm going to throw it in my cup. But then for the other ones, like say for this size one, if you can still continue to break it if that's easier. Or you can just start cutting. So I wanted that one to be about half the size, so I just cut it in half. So I'm gonna measure out 2 full cups of broccoli. So we're almost at 1. And as long as your vegetables are like similar size, that's helpful for cooking because then they heat more evenly, or they cook more evenly. I'm not always as precise, but alright, so I'm going to put a couple more in there. So here we have 1 full cup. I'm just going to put that in my bowl to make space for another cup. I think broccoli is a lot easier to cut than cauliflower. Right, cauliflower is basically all like one head, and it's harder because there's no real stalk, so sometimes cauliflower can be a little bit of a struggle, but you could easily put cauliflower, carrots, mushrooms. You could chop up some tomatoes if you wanted to put them in there. You could put kale in here. That would be good too. Spinach. I'm just a sucker for veggie lasagna. Growing up, my siblings were mostly vegetarian or vegan, so I got really used to being that way. Alright. Just going to throw a few more. So now we have 2 cups. Perfect. So I'm going to move that a little bit. And then we're going to start cooking our broccoli first. And then we'll cut the onion while the broccoli's cooking. So broccoli is going to take a little bit longer than the onion to cook just because red is thicker. The onion can get really thin. So I'm going to turn my oven on. But just to show you, I'm just using like a large skillet, which hopefully should fit everything. The nice thing about this recipe is you don't need to like cover it, you don't need to cook the noodles beforehand. The noodles just cook in the sauce. So I just added a little bit of oil to prevent my broccoli from sticking and so that it gives it like a nice brown. So I'm going to take my broccoli and add it to the pan. We will stir fry that, but we can let it heat and chop our onion. So let me grab my onion. So I have a small onion. The recipe says about a 1/4 cup of chopped onions. Since I'm not adding a couple other things, I'm just going to add the whole onion regardless of if it's more than a 1/4 cup. I think sometimes, right, recipes can be annoying in some ways, right, when, I'm going to wash this first. Always wash your produce regardless of if you buy organic or not, right? Like it went through a lot of stages to get to you, and if you're in the grocery store, right, other people potentially have touched it, so it's always a good idea. What was I talking about? Oh, it's annoying with recipes sometimes, right, when it'll be like 1 onion, and like onions can be small like this, or they can be the size of your hand. So it's nice sometimes when they have the like actual measurements. So I'm going to cut the ends off my onion. And then, right, I've created a flat surface, so I'm going to cut it in half. Throw that in my compost. And I didn't peel my onion beforehand, so I'm going to take off the outer layer. I don't know if you can hear, but my broccoli is starting to sizzle already, which is perfect. So this recipe can be pretty quick too. If you are just like actually making it, it'll take probably about 30 minutes. So I'm going to make cuts one way on my onion, and then I'll rotate it 90 degrees and make cuts the opposite way so we get a nice dice. A way to help so your cooking or your cutting board isn't flailing around like mine is, you can put a wet piece of paper towel underneath and that should sort of stabilize it. Alright, so we're doing the same thing with the other half of my onion. Just dicing. Maybe one day we can do like, not that I'm like a super skilled cutter, but there are lots of different types of cuts that you can make. So I'm going to go ahead, scoot you back over here. I'm stirring my broccoli around. It'll cook evenly, and I'm going to add my onions now. Traditionally, right, like lasagna can have cottage cheese or ricotta cheese. I don't have that in my house all the time, so that's why I thought this recipe was nice, right? Like, I didn't have to go to the store to get any of these things. And it's a nice way to use up some of the stuff that I already have in my house. Especially as the holiday weekend is coming up, some of you might be doing a little bit of traveling or going some different spots, so you might not be home. So good to use up what you have. Does anybody have 4th of July plans? I know I don't normally have consistent plans, but I do always like fireworks. I know some cities have canceled them. And I very much enjoy campfires, right? S'mores are life. One thing to note, if you are planning to use the pantry this week, we're open on Thursday instead of Friday. Right, normally we're open Friday by appointment only. This week we're open Thursday by appointment only because Friday right before 4th of July, people might be going away. So make sure you make an appointment. Today is Tuesday, June 30th. So make sure you make an appointment by tomorrow at 5 p.m. so that we can pack your bags for you. We're still utilizing a bag packing system, so you can fill out what you're kind of looking for. We'll pack it to the best of our ability. All right. So we're basically stir frying these veggies. I mostly want the broccoli to cook, and a good way to see if it's tender is to just poke a fork in it. It will, be sitting in some liquid for a little bit of time. You have to simmer it, so it should absorb some liquid and get a little bit softer then. I'm just going to wait till it's a little bit softer. Yeah, let me just show you. Right, so our onions are getting a little bit brown, so if you don't really like your onions like super soft, just add them later so they don't have as long to cook. If you were using ground beef, you would just be browning the beef or turkey, onion and pepper at this time. And then you want to make sure, if you were using beef, that you just drain the liquid off after it's done, to just get some of the fat off and not have like too much excess liquid. All right, I'm gonna grab a fork. So I'm just gonna poke the broccoli and see where it's at. So it's still a little bit crunchy. Ultimately it's your preference as to how crunchy you want it. If I would have chopped these smaller, it would have cooked faster. So that is on me. But I like having some chunks of, larger chunks of vegetables in my lasagna. Alright, so our onions are getting sort of brown, and like I said, the broccoli will cook a little bit. It's not like you're boiling it, but like when you're simmering it, it's getting softer as well, The heat is sort of releasing liquid. So we're just going to add the other ingredients. So I'm going to grab first I'm going to put in the water. Let me grab the water and the pasta sauce. So this is 1 1/4 cups of water. On my pan is very hot. And then this is about 1 3/4 cup of pasta sauce. If you have a little extra, it's not a big deal. I like my pasta saucy. I feel like saucy is not a word that gets used often, and I feel like I've used it twice on this show. But that's fine. So I added my pasta sauce and my water. I'm gonna grab my lasagna noodles and my Italian seasoning. Alright, so I'm getting very close to the end on my Italian seasoning, so if this happens to you, sprinkle in a 1/4 teaspoon. You could use oregano, you could use basil. Those are some of the spices that are commonly in Italian seasoning. I'm gonna mix this around before I add my noodles. And so it seems like it may be a little bit of an odd thing to add water, but I think, right, especially since we're not boiling the noodles and cooking them ahead of time, this helps for the noodles to have liquid to absorb so they soften up. So I went ahead and broke, so let me show you. I started with full lasagna noodles and I just broke them, you know, just break them into smaller pieces than that. And they don't have to be consistent pieces. And so this is the nice thing too, is sometimes I know when I'm like making a traditional lasagna and then I have a bunch of broken pieces in the bottom of the box, it's super annoying. So I just broke them into like pieces that are about this size. And I know that can be, I'm gonna add those in, and mix it around. I know that can be hard to like put in a measuring cup. So the recipe also tells you how many ounces. I recognize that a lot of people don't have like kitchen scales. I didn't have one until about a year ago when I just decided to spend $10, and it's been super nice for some things like that. So if you're measuring in a cup though, it should be fine. Just make your pieces a little bit smaller. All right. So let me just show you what it looks like. So as you can see, we have our broccoli, our noodles are just chilling in there. So we just want to make sure this starts to boil, which is already starting to do, right, since it was so hot. A way that you could like escalate that, right, is if you were trying to shave off a few minutes, you could also just like add hot water in there and that would help it get up to the right temperature. So basically, we're just going to let this simmer for about 10 to 12 minutes. Basically, that's just the amount of time it's going to take to cook the noodles. So I'm going to reduce the heat a little bit. And then I don't have to cover it. So nice, so easy, and also super adaptable. Alright, so I'm going to scoot you back and we'll start making our overnight oats. Alright, cool. I'm going to take away my cutting board because we don't need that anymore. And I know this is more ingredients than I initially showed you. So honestly, really all you need for like basic overnight oats is some sort of milk and oatmeal. Let me grab a spoon quick. Alright, if you are gluten-free, make sure you're getting gluten-free oats. Oats themselves theoretically should be gluten-free, right? But like because of like farming systems, like things have sort of crossed in the air, and so some oats might not they might have traces of gluten in them. All right, so I just have a jar. You could use, it's hard to see with the glaring window. You could use just like any sort of Tupperware that you have, as long as it has a lid. That's great because you're just gonna throw it in the fridge. So the simplest version of overnight oats is half a cup of oats and a half a cup of milk. So it's equal parts oats and milk. So we're just gonna measure out half a cup of oats. This is a small jar. So we put them in our jar. I should have set a timer. So I'm going to set a timer for like 8 minutes, assuming that we've been chatting for 2 minutes. The nice thing with noodles, not exact. Try them to see if they're ready. So I'm going to move these out of our way. Alright, and then we're going to do half a cup of almond milk. Again, you could use normal dairy milk, soy milk, coconut milk, whatever kind of milk you want. So we're just adding that into our jar. I buy unsweetened almond milk just because then it's nice to add to some stuff, and sometimes, right, if you're trying to substitute almond milk for normal milk and it has like a vanilla flavor, that can be a little bit different. So one of the variations that I normally do with oats is I'll also add some yogurt. I normally buy, and it took me a long time to actually like plain yogurt, but I normally buy like a Greek plain yogurt, right? It's a nice source of protein. It's got some good probiotics. I know we talked two episodes ago about sugar content and things, right? And how pasta sauce sometimes can have like a higher sugar count than you expect. That also happens with yogurt. So sometimes, right, when I don't want to have a lot of added sugar in my diet, and it's nice that the labels have updated, right? So it says includes 0 grams added sugar. So this has 7 grams of sugar in it, which is pretty good, and it doesn't have added sugars, which is nice. Because I think sometimes, right, like when you're eating yogurt, it's super good and it's super tasty. And I know I'm like a sucker for vanilla yogurt, lemon yogurt. But then I see it has like 20 grams of sugar, and so sometimes that makes me sad. So I'm just going to add half of a cup of yogurt in here. And some of the variations that I was looking at, right, like if you do want like I don't remember which one it was that's on the recipe, that's like you can add vanilla yogurt and then it makes some like flavored things, or you can add like fruit yogurt or something like that. So I'm just gonna add my yogurt into here. And I'm just gonna mix it. You could also put a cap on it and just shake it so that it mixes. And then what will happen, right, overnight, the dry oats will soak up the liquid, and then it'll just be this like delicious version of oatmeal that's a little bit creamy. And the nice thing is you can add like so many variations of toppings, right? Sometimes I'll just put like a tablespoon of peanut butter, a tablespoon of jelly, PB&J version. Sometimes I'll throw fruit. I like to do like bananas and peanut butter, sometimes chocolate chips if I'm feeling something super tasty. And a lot of the times I'll also do blueberries. So these are frozen blueberries and almonds or walnuts. I don't think I have almonds right now. I'm going to stir our lasagna skillet. And I've never made this recipe before. Just as a disclaimer, I have made a different skillet lasagna before and it was super tasty. But I think it was like it had different ingredients that I did not have. So the noodles are still pretty hard. So we're going to keep letting it cook. It's simmering. So we have 4 more minutes on the timer. That might take longer because I didn't set it beforehand. So going back to our oats, it's always like I mean, you'll have to sort of try it and see what you like, right? Sometimes if you add stuff like right before you're about to eat it, then it doesn't have time to like soak, or you know, sometimes berries can like fall apart and stuff, or bananas can, if they're in the yogurt, they shouldn't brown, right? But they can brown. But since these are frozen, I'm just going to add them beforehand because I don't necessarily want to be eating my berries frozen, so you could thaw them ahead of time. So I'm just going to measure out. I normally do half a cup of like fruit, so I'm going to continue to use my half cup. And pour out some blueberries in there, and then just throw them in my yogurt. So you can find oats at the pantry. You can find some nuts. I think most recently we've had walnuts. And sometimes we have some sort of shelf-stable milk. So if that's the case, you can also use shelf-stable milk. Shelf-stable milk can be super nice, right? And especially if you don't have like reliable access to refrigeration, or you want something on the go, it can be a nice thing to take like camping, so that you don't have to worry about refrigerating it. But once you open it, you should refrigerate it. So our oats have turned this like purple color. Let me show you. It's kind of hard to see. But then I won't put the almonds in, right, because the almonds then will like soak up liquid and then they'll just get mushy, and I don't want that. So just gonna continue to mix it, right, because sometimes it's hard to get on the bottom. And then that's all you do. Put a lid on it, throw it in the fridge. It's a super nice, super easy like breakfast. And you could make it more or less however you want. So let's go back to this. I think I added a little extra pasta sauce, so that could be why it looks more liquidy. Let me show you. But it's coming together, right? So 8 minutes just finished. I'm going to take my fork and I'm going to poke the noodles. And I'm just going to try one. So those are still pretty tough. I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes and see what happens. Do y'all have any like favorite recipes? Especially, I'm very sad because, right, like summer is very much like barbecue season and I don't have a grill. But if y'all have fun recipes that you might, you know, bring to a potluck, especially if people are getting together in a safe capacity, remember that the virus is still out there. Please throw them in the chat. I really like recipe sharing. I think it's a super important thing, right? Because, like, I know sometimes on the internet it gets super overwhelming to find different recipes, and especially, right, like, it always bums me out when there are, like, spices that I don't have that seem to be critical for the dish. So it's always nice to get some new ideas, especially people who have tried things and like them, because some recipes just aren't good. So that's why I'm super thankful for like rating systems, and obviously like rating systems have their own like faults, right? Like, I know I always get like suspicious on Amazon when like 5 people have all given it 5 stars and don't seem to have real names. Right, and everybody has different preferences, right? Like I made some sort of sour cream and onion chicken skillet like 6 weeks ago. Did not like it, even though it had like 4.5 stars. There's too much Italian seasoning in there, which is probably why I don't have a lot of Italian seasoning left. But spices are a good investment. And like I've said before, you can get spices at the dollar store. They've got a pretty decent selection. And even Ollie's, I think Ollie's, well, most stores are open again, but Ollie's has some like good size. I don't know if I have any anymore. Jars. And even like, I've been doing more like pickup orders at Walmart because it's free if you do like I think they just up the limit to $35. But if you spend at least $30 or $35, then you can get the pickup for free, whereas a lot of other places will charge you. And some of their spices are a decent price too. Also, generally like $1 for some spices. And then there are some random spices that are a bit more expensive, no matter where you go. Alright, so that was 3 more minutes. We are going to try our noodles again. That one just broke. That one seems big. I think they still need a couple more minutes. It's open to your interpretation of what al dente means to you. I'm going to set the timer for 3 more minutes, which means we will have cooked them outside of the 10 to 12 minutes. But that's fine, right? Like recipes are hard sometimes because you're just like, oh, it's not cooking the way that it should, or it's not cooking in the time frame that it should. But right, all it's very dependent on like what pans you're using, your heat source, right? Like gas versus electric. I know I grew up with a gas stove, and so it was hard for me when I like started living not home to adjust to electric. It's just a different heating method. And so don't worry if things take longer. You're not doing anything wrong. If they take shorter, don't worry about that either, right? As long as the end product is good, then you're good. Right, I think sometimes cooking and baking can be like a little bit scary, but I think it's pretty flexible. I mean, baking is a little bit more of like a science, I think, because you know there are different like ratios of stuff in order to get things to rise or bake properly. But I think cooking is like pretty adaptable, right? And even if something like doesn't work out, you can always salvage it into something else. I know I spend some of my time just repurposing leftovers, right? Like yesterday, I had a bunch of like extra rice that was gonna go bad, and so one of the best things to do, I feel like, is to make fried rice, which we've done before. But I was trying to look for like different things, right, to like pair it with meatloaf, just not on its own. And so I found a recipe for these like rice cakes that, you know, had some breadcrumbs, some eggs, some cheese, and you mix it all together and sort of patty it up and put them either on like a skillet or griddle. So it's always fun to sort of try to repurpose things so that, you know, you're really making the most of the food that you have, and you're not wasting, right? There's a lot of food waste in America, which can be very sad. So I'm gonna try these again. Timer has 32 more seconds. But It seems like, well, our broccoli is softer now too, which is nice. I think they're pretty much set. We're just going to add some cheese. If you don't have mozzarella cheese, don't worry. The recipe suggested that you could add Parmesan, Asiago, or Monterey Jack. I normally, a lot of those just have Parmesan in my house, but you could also add ricotta. Some of the recipes that I saw, you just like put a dollop of ricotta cheese. Ricotta is traditionally in lasagnas. So I'm gonna grab my cheese. You can measure it out if you want. Like we've sort of established in the first episode, I'm a big cheese fan. And I know I'm just going to add more cheese anyway, so I'm not worried about measuring out a third of a cup. So I'm just going to sprinkle it on top. Alright, you can always add more later. And I'm just going to let that melt for a few minutes. If you want it to get like, you know, that sort of like baked or crusty, you could always put the oven on broil for a couple minutes and throw the skillet in there, provided you have an oven safe skillet. You just want to make sure it's something that actually can sustain high heat. The nice thing about these like stainless steel pans is that I can just throw them right in the oven. But let me just show you before we sign off. So the cheese is melting, the liquid is still sort of boiling, which is fine. And so, you know, if you felt like, you would probably want to do it a little bit early on, but if you felt like it was too liquidy, you could throw in some more noodles. If you felt like it wasn't liquidy enough, you could add some more sauce. So yeah, I mean, it can be like a fine balance, but there's definitely things you can do to fix it. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that you try it. If you do try it, let us know, throw it in the comments. And again, if you have any suggestions on things that we should be making, please let me know. I'm always down to try something, or at least like look up some different recipes, you know, and we can figure it out together. So I hope you enjoy your holiday weekend and eat us some more for me. I'll see y'all.